Which line?
63.
No, the sentence particular.
In the transient symbol of humanity draped.
Narrative, the transient symbol of humanity
Of humanity draped.
Draped, yes.
draped.
Mm.
He feels his substance of undying self.
What page is that?
23.
23.
23.
Just
Bottom.
on the bottom.
Bottom.
Yeah.
The transient symbol.
Mm.
That's us.
I can share with you. Difficult for me to see, so it's a little difficult, but whenever I need that.
Okay.
And where is Ananda tonight?
Engaged with the kids. So he's
With the
supposed to
kids.
come by
Yeah.
6:45 or something. So
Uh,
nowadays Arjun is coming very late. His school ends at 6 o'clock.
oh,
And by the time he comes it's
sure.
6:45, 6:50, and he
Sure.
needs some attention.
Yeah. There she is.
Hi. We saved a place for you right there.
Oh wow. Very VIP place. And I don't want it. I will not.
Oh, you don't want it.
Oh. Hi Shirley. Oh, I was looking for your reply.
I just
Thank you. Hi Uma. Sorry. Good
Have
night.
a beer. Hi.
Oh.
this is how you know the inside.
Today we're going to start a little differently. I'm happy to be back with you again. Namaste all. Basically, we speak about japa and we speak about nama japa, but we don't really know what mantra is. We can say that Savitri is all mantra, but what does that mean? So I have a little book here written by Madhav Pandit many, many years ago, and he says that when a mantra is uttered effectively, it sets in motion vibrations that evoke the corresponding deity into the atmosphere where it is uttered. This, in brief, is the principle underlying the mantra and japa. And then he gives us some things from Swami Shivananda in his book on japa yoga. And basically, at least from a musical point of view, because that's my background, we know that every sound has a corresponding vibration. In America, A440, that's 440 cycles per second, is the tone of A. In Europe, it's about 430 cycles per second. So we know that every sound carries in it vibrations. And these vibrations can also be shaped into different appearances. And there was a lady, a Mrs. Hughes, and she had this instrument, and it was a flexible membrane. And when she sang into it, the notes danced into specific forms. And she says that they would come in stars, spirals, snakes, and imaginations, rioting in a wealth of captivating methodical design. And then she found that if she sang very, very clearly and specifically, a daisy would appear. And she could project that daisy on the screen for everyone to see it. And when she got a little further, she could create many, many different daisies, some with double rows, triple rows, all of great beauty. And then there was a Mrs. Finlang in France, and she sang to the Virgin Mary, and the Virgin Mary appeared. And we know Mother's story of the Virgin Mary. All of you know that story? No. Okay, well, I'll tell you that story. It's a bit sad, but during World War II, the Germans were bombing outlying areas of France. And these two little children were walking behind their parents, and their parents were hit with a bomb, and both died immediately. And these were very young children, and they began to pray to God for milk. And Mother said their prayer was so pure. She said, I had to go to them and take care of them. And she brought them milk, and she cared for their souls. So we see that the mantra can invoke and evoke whatever we want. And Namajapa is very similar, because if we have faith and we invoke the Mother, then the Mother will come to us if we have total belief in her. So there's a passage in Savitri about the mantra. And Sri Aurobindo writes, it's not very long, as when the mantra sinks in yoga's ear, its message enters stirring the blind brain and keeps in the dim, ignorant cells its sound. The hearer understands a form of words, and musing on the index thought it holds, he strives to read it with the laboring mind, but finds bright hints, not the embodied truth. Then, falling silent in himself to know, he meets the deeper listening of his soul. The word repeats itself in rhythmic strains. Thought, vision, feeling, sense, the body's self are seized unalterably, and he endures an ecstasy and an immortal change. He feels a wideness and becomes a power. All knowledge rushes on him like a sea. Transmuted by the white spiritual ray, he walks in naked heavens of joy and calm, sees the God face, and hears transcendent speech. This is what Savitri is. It is a mantra. And each line, in fact, each word has its own vibration. So we'll begin today on page 23, Book 1, Canto 3, The Yoga of the Soul's Release. Now, we have to understand what's happening here. First of all, Ashrapati, it's Sri Aurobindo, in the persona of Ashrapati, is going through these experiences. And he does write them all in his record of yoga. Come in.
Come here. You
So his experiences are so extraordinary that 2 cantos are devoted to them. Canto 3, the Yoga of the Soul's Release, and Canto 5, which is the culmination of all of his great experiences that he shares with us. But in between, and some people don't agree with me, but that's okay, you'll see where Sri Aurobindo is also talking to us. It's very interesting. So we're going to begin. Please excuse my my speech because I don't have a lot of strength yet, but I'll get it. In the transient symbol of humanity draped, he feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. And this is very clearly Ashwapati. A beam of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that super life. He has drunk from the breasts of the mother of the worlds. A topless nature, supernature, fills his frame. She adopts his spirit's everlasting ground as the security of her changing world and shapes the figure of her unborn mites. So what we are seeing here as Ashwapati is experiencing these things, he is feeling his undying self in this symbol of humanity which is draped, covered in veils. And that's the first few lines. And therefore he loses his kinship, his family sort of, to mortality. He's not mortal any longer. He's the God-man now, or becoming the God-man. A beam of the eternal smites his heart. Now we know that the word smite means to hit hard. It hits his heart, and his thought stretches to infinitude. This is a word of Sri Aurobindo that he coined, infinitudes, infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses. So we see these lines, you see, losing kinship to mortality, a beam of the eternal hitting his heart, smiting his heart, his thought stretching into infinitude. Everything in him turns to spirit vastnesses. And then what happens? Because there's a full stop there. We have his soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that super life. Now, interesting, oceaned here as a verb. Oceaned by that super life. He has drunk from the breasts of the mother of the worlds. That is our divine mother, the supreme creatrix, Prakriti. And then there's a semicolon. Sri Aurobindo is not yet finished with this image that he wants us to understand. So now this supernature, which is topless, has no end, no ceiling, fills his frame. And the divine creatrix, she adopts his spirit's everlasting ground. Adopts it in what way? As the security of her changing world. we know that the only thing we can count on, as we say in America, is taxes and change. So we know that change is assured. Every moment of our life is changing. Every moment. We are not what we were a few minutes ago. We are in this sacred environment. We are seeing each other, some of us for the first time. The vibrations of all are mantric. And we see now that Prakriti shapes the figure of her unborn mites because she has this power, but she's taking from the unborn and bringing it into form. Now, without the supermind, or above the supermind, there is no form. No form at all. Everything is formless. Perfect, immutable, transcendent. But beginning with the supermind, creation is possible. And this creation is what we are in now. Some weeks ago I told you that the Vedic rishis, and of course others in our time, have told us that each of us has been through 1 lakh of births to get here now. To be here today, we've had 1 lakh of births. Sri Aurobindo often says that it takes about 2 years in the place of rest until we take birth again. But Mother says also it could take many, many years. It could take centuries for very evolved souls to want to come back to this veil of sorrow and tears. But it's the only place that evolution can happen. It doesn't happen in any of the other worlds. And now we're seeing through this Webb telescope that there are so many more worlds out there that we never thought existed. And Mother is in charge of each one of them. She's in fact above these worlds. She has created these worlds. So, immortally, she conceives herself in him. Now, him is not capitalized here, but it is the creature. Here on this earth, it's the human being. In the creature, the unveiled creatrix or creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Her being is his through a vast identity. Now I'll tell you a personal story, a little risque, but it happened to me. I had a restaurant in New York City in Greenwich Village, and one day this girlfriend, whom I had known in college, comes to see me. And she says, I would like to continue our relationship. And she goes to kiss me, and she screams, absolutely screams. Mother's face came out of my face, and I said, we can only be friends. And she went back to Israel. She wrote many children's books, and she died in her early 50s of Hopkinson's disease, I believe. Now, her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Now, we are talking here about Ashwapati, not man as yet. Not yet. His being
Her being.
Her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed in man the overt divine.
Naradji, same experience with Tanmay and Pavitra,
Yes,
the face.
yeah. I don't remember Tanmai's. Can you tell us that one?
Tanmay, when Pavitra left his body, he was very much upset and kept moaning and went to complain to mother that
Yes,
he cannot be without him.
yes.
So
Tanmai said this, huh?
Tanmay, mother said, "Don't worry, he is with me."
Yeah.
But he was not satisfied. But again, mother said, "Okay, you want to experience that." So for quite some time, like he was looking at her face, suddenly Pavitra face came into mother's face,
Wow.
and then he was like satisfied, and then onwards he was
Yeah.
happy.
And I think I've shared with you Huta's experience when she was going to mother every day. And one day she says to mother, because she was a little bit blunt, "Are you really the Divine Mother?"
Uh,
And mother said, "Come tomorrow morning." And Huta could hardly tell me what happened. She said, "From here up, mother showed me the divinity that she was." She was shaking when she told me this. You can imagine. That's why in this yoga we are told that if the divine showed us what he really is, or she really is, it would shatter us. We're not ready yet. We're not quite ready yet. Please come. Yeah, please come.
yeah, he never uses it. Don't worry. It's like
You can share with Bhaskar. That's right.
he doesn't use it.
Oh,
Do you?
hello. 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 Now we're going to see what happens. A static oneness and dynamic power descend in him. The integral Godhead's seals. Now I've looked up integral so many times in Cambridge Dictionary and Collins Dictionary. The preferred pronunciation is integral, and the second pronunciation is integral. So you can choose whatever you like. I won't argue. Okay, now, semicolon. The integral Godhead seals, semicolon. His soul and body take that splendid stamp. So that stamp of perfection is now in Sri Aurobindo and, of course, in Ashwapati. And now you see, for me, Sri Aurobindo is beginning to address us. He's still speaking, of course, about Ashwapati, and Ashwapati has taken a leap from this lower hemisphere of body, life, and mind, and he has leapt into the spiritual dimensions. And who can tell me what they are? Higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, and supermind. So he is getting there now. But I feel that this has to do with us also. Because what does Sri Aurobindo say? He says, a long, dim preparation is man's life. So he's not speaking of Ashwapati here. Ashwapati's already made that leap. But he's speaking of man's life now. Ranganath and I disagree on this one, but that's okay. Um, what is our life like? A circle of toil and hope and war and peace. Oh. Tracked out by life on matter's obscure ground. You see, matter is the basis where all the evolution begins. So many poets talk to us about how they are a lump of clay, and created from the clay to become a god. Even Sri Aurobindo tells us in another line in Savitri, and from the worm foresees the coming God. Oh. So the worm is evolving too. And next evolution, maybe you'll be a better worm or some slightly different elevation in the thrust forward. Now, in his climb to a peak no feet have ever trod, he seeks through a penumbra shot with flame a veiled reality, half known, ever missed, a search for something or someone never found. Now, you see here, beginning with in his climb, we have 9 lines to follow before a full stop. And Sri Aurobindo writes to Amal, I usually don't have more than 5 or 6 lines. So here he's got 9, sometimes it's even more, because this is so important that we begin to understand what we are and where we are going. So this penumbra, this shadow that is shot through with flame, what is it? It's a veiled reality, only half known, ever missed. A search for something or someone never found. Cult of an ideal never made real here. An endless spiral of ascent and fall, until at last is reached the giant point through which his glory shines, for whom we were made, and we break into the infinity of God. There are those who have done this in the ashram. And I won't mention names, but there are many of them who were able to break into this infinity of God and convey things from the occult or the inner worlds to others. Usually at night, in sleep, but sometimes during the day also. Now, we see the next line, across our nature's borderline we escape, into supernature's arc of living light. Okay, that's about us now. And now Sri Aurobindo is going to go back and he's going to talk about Ashwapati, because he says, this now was witnessed in that son of force. Son of force. In him, that high transition laid its base. Now we know that Sri Aurobindo tells us in the record on yoga and in many of his letters on yoga that he too had to go through this process of becoming totally aware and conscious when he took the dive into humanity, becoming a person. generally we forget who we were even in our last incarnation. We don't remember. Some of us can remember, perhaps, but most do not. And in a way, that's a blessing, too. Mother speaks about that because she says that, if you were a king in the last life, you might want to hold on to that king idea in the current life. But not so. We don't remember these things. Now, we have this friend of ours who has written, I think, 4 books now. Her name is Dina Merriam, and she recalls all her previous lives in great detail. Really, it's something you cannot challenge. Mother also talks to us about one day going down into a building, and she felt this darkness and she felt this fear. And she said to whoever was with us, I was killed here once. Yeah. So we will continue a little more. Is that all right with everyone? It's just 7. Can we go for a few minutes more? Okay. Now we're back to Ashwapati, Sri Aurobindo. Original and supernal immanence. Now, I want to call your attention to the capitalization of words. And when I talk to Nolini about this, he says when Sri Aurobindo capitalizes, especially in Savitri, he says it's the essence of the thing. So we know that we had force, we had glory, we had life, and we had matter. We had Godhead, we had creatrix, we had the supernature. So original and supernal immanence, of which all nature's process is the art. The cosmic worker set his secret hand to turn this frail mud engine to heaven use. So here we're speaking about Ashwapati. At this point, he's a mud engine. He took human birth. But the creatrix, the cosmic worker, Prakriti, wants to turn this frail mud engine to heaven use. Now, this is all about Ashwapati. And I'll take it a few lines and then we'll, if there's any questions here. Okay, now, a presence, capital P, wrought behind the ambiguous screen, puzzling, doubtful screen. It beat his soil to bear a titan's weight. And one day I'll go through on the lexicon all that Sri Aurobindo has told us about the Titan. It's very important, but there's a lot to it. It'll take quite a few minutes. Sri Aurobindo capitalizes Titan here because it doesn't mean the Titan. It means this great, powerful weight that Ashwapati has to assume. It beat his soil, his being, his half-hewn blocks. It refines them, refining half-hewn blocks of natural strength. It built his soul into a statued God. The craftsman. Who is the craftsman? The divine. The craftsman of the magic stuff of self, who labors at his high and difficult plan in the wide workshop of the wonderful world. Look at the alliteration here. 4 W's. Wide workshop, wonderful world. How marvelous. What a perfect line. And what did it do? It modeled, it shaped. And of course, we hear all about shaping us. How he has to chisel away half-hewn blocks. He has to chisel away. And I tell you a story once of this great choral conductor, Paul Christiansen. And I attended a concert of his in New York, and I had never heard anything so perfect. And I went back to stage. He was 6'6", huge man. And I said, please tell me how you are able to achieve this. And he says, it's very simple. It's chipping away all the crud so you get to the essence. And here's what Sri Aurobindo is telling us in these beautiful lines, that these half-hewn blocks of natural strength were refined and built his soul into a statued God, the craftsman of the magic stuff of self, who labors at his high and difficult plan in the wide workshop of the wonderful world, modeled in inward time his rhythmic parts. I'll just go a little more. Then came the abrupt, transcendent miracle. Well, it is a miracle. And Sri Aurobindo says at some point, there are no miracles. And then in Savitri he says, all's miracle here and can by miracle change. So we see that the divine can give us these paradoxes, and we have to work them out in our own consciousness. Then came the abrupt, transcendent miracle. Transcendent now, not cosmic, not personal, transcendent miracle. Colon, the masked, immaculate grandeur could outline, at travail in the occult womb of life, his dreamed magnificence of things to be. The grandeur, again, synonym for the divine. Sri Aurobindo uses so many synonyms to describe the divine to us. And he tells us the same thing in hundreds of ways, so we eventually can get it stuck here. Okay, now, a crown of the architecture of the worlds, a mystery of married earth and heaven, annexed divinity to the mortal scheme. So to annex something is, to make a claim of it. And this divinity is now annexed to our mortal lives. And heaven is here at this moment for all of us, touching us, opening us. Slowly, quickly, doesn't matter. Now, a seer was born, capital S, a shining guest of time. And we'll end there for today. There's going to be a lot more about Ashwapati and his progress. We're going to see in the lines that come ahead how he grows into this godlike being. And Sri Aurobindo is telling us his story. Any questions?
Here he mentioned his. So his is on humanity or Ashwapati?
For him, you mean? Or his? Where is the his?
When the start.
His dreamed magnificence? It's the divine's dreamed magnificence. He's dreaming of creating this being, which is himself, by the way, because he's everything. He's the big problem with the West is that they cannot conceive that the divine could be evil. And so they separate him. God here, perfect, good, benevolent, all powerful, and down here, Satan, the devil. But it's not true. If the divine is everything, he can be all of these things. And this is what we have to understand as we go through this very difficult moment in life, in the world. Because no darkness can ever obscure the light. Impossible. And the mother is there, and the mother's going to see to this. So I always suggest that we don't concentrate too much on the negativity and the destructive things of the present, because the Divine Mother is there. And whether it takes these difficult circumstances or truth or the abyss, whatever it's going to be, a new being is going to evolve. And that new being is the supramental being. And it's already here. Nolini told me this. The supramental beings are already on Earth. They could be young children. We don't know yet. They could be very young children. But until we can get into the spiritual realms of consciousness, we won't be able to see the world as we see it now. Because now we see everything in terms of duality. Good and bad, love and hate, hot and cold. When we can get above that, even into the higher knowledge, the first stage of the higher mind will change our view of everything. So that has to be our main work. Namaste all. Yes, Cesar, go ahead.
For the divine, like the craftsman or the grandeur that we refer to, it is like the Purusha or like the above the Purusha?
In the Vedic sense, he's the Purusha. And he's working through the supermind to create this world. When he goes above that, we won't know anything because he's transcendent, and we have a long road to the supramental first. Any other questions?
Would you just elaborate on the miracle? Because he said all is miracle, but then to focus on a particular event, and then Mother gives the flower miracle,
which is
as
the air of Aurobindo.
Exactly.
And the air of Aurobindo is a miracle. She didn't name many flowers with two significances. Mostly the 12 hibiscus that I sent her, she named two. Charm of Aurobindo, realization of Aurobindo, and then charm of the new creation, realization of the new creation. So those 12 she named with two names. But miracle is very important. Even though everything is miracle here, we can still feel the miracle in the creation, in each of us. Namaste. Namaste.
Shall we read from the beginning to end?
Yes, would you like to do that for us?
in the transient symbol of humanity draped, he feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. A being of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses. His soul breaks out to join the Oversoul. His life is oceaned by that super life. He has drunk from the breasts of the mother of the worlds. A thoughtless supernature fills his frame. She adopts his spirit's everlasting ground as the security of her changing world and shapes the figure of her unborn mites. Immortally, she conceives herself in him. In the creature, the unveiled creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed in man the overt divine, a static oneness and dynamic power descend in him. The integral Godhead seals his soul and body take that splendid stand. A long dim preparation is man's life, a circle of toil and hope and war and peace, tracked out by life on matter's obscure ground. In his climb to a peak no feet have ever trod, he seeks through a penumbra shot with flame a veiled reality half known, ever missed, a search for something or someone never found, cult of an ideal never made real here, an endless spiral of ascent and fall, until at last is reached the giant point through which his glory shines for whom we were made, and we break into the infinity of God. Across our nature's borderline, we escape into supernature's arc of living light. This now was witnessed in that Son of Force. In him that high transition laid its base, original and supernal immanence of which all nature's process is the art. The cosmic worker set his secret hand to turn this frail mud engine to heaven use, a presence brought behind the ambiguous screen. It beat his soil to bear a titan's weight, refining half-hewn blocks of natural strength. It built his soul into a statued god, the craftsman of the magic stuff of self, who labors at his high and difficult plan in the wide workshop of the wonderful world, modeled in inward time his rhythmic parts. Then came the abrupt transcendent miracle the masked immaculate grandeur could outline, a travail in the occult womb of life, his dreamed magnificence of things to be, a crown of the architecture of the world, a mystery of married earth and heaven, annexed divinity to the mortal scheme. A seer was born, the shining guest of time.
Very well read. Thank you.